Your endocrine system is like a sophisticated orchestra. You've got hormones, these chemical messengers. You've got neurotransmitters, also messengers, that are like the musicians playing the symphony. Each one has a specific role to play. Insulin regulates your blood sugar. Thyroid hormones control your metabolism. Testosterone and estrogen manage everything from muscle mass to mood to sexual function. Cortisol does a lot to handle your stress response. And there are dozens more, all working together in this beautiful, coordinated symphony. Endocrine disrupting chemicals are like someone coming into the orchestra and messing with the instruments or playing a different tune, disrupting the music, disrupting the symphony and turning it into cacophony. Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Hello and welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast where we help you master natural supplements, enhance your emotional vitality, and thrive without the use of pharma drugs. This episode will address all three of those areas. This is the hidden epidemic, how endocrine disruptors are stealing your health, and what you can do about it besides just avoiding them. Now, this episode has been a long time coming. Along with my lovely wife, Jen, we have been working on this for about a year and a half. Now, we've teased it a little bit, and if you're a regular listener, you know we've been talking about a new protocol that we've been working on. We've been talking about a book that we've been writing. This is some really intensely important stuff, and I really hope that you will stick with me throughout this episode. There's a lot of information here, but I believe it is incredibly critical because there is an epidemic happening right now, not the kind that makes headlines or fills hospital beds overnight. This one's quiet. It's insidious. It's been building for decades, and chances are it's already affecting you and everyone you love. I'm talking about endocrine disrupting chemicals known as EDCs. Now, if you think you know a lot about EDCs, stay tuned because there's a lot more to learn. I cannot tell you how much I thought I knew until I started digging deeper, working on this protocol, working on this book. This is essentially an episode one of what is a series of episodes all about this epidemic. I believe it is one of the most crucial things that I can do on Vitality Radio to help you optimize your health. I take it very, very seriously. It's a big deal. And the first part of this episode is going to sound a little dire, but you need to understand what's going on. The good news is I believe we have some incredible solutions for you, and I cannot wait to share them. Now, this episode I'm doing by myself, but Jen will be involved in future episodes and has been very much involved in prepping for this one because we have been digging deep, really deep, to find the answers to this problem, what I call the hidden epidemic, and we cannot wait to roll all of that out over the next few weeks and months as we finish the book and complete the protocol. But the first half of the protocol is done, and it is time, as I've been promising over the last few months, to share with you what we've learned so far today. Today, you will leave with actionable information to start transforming your health when it comes to your hormones and your neurotransmitters, real solutions, not just theory. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on this. When I first discovered or started to discover that this was a real problem, this endocrine disrupting chemical issue, I started seeing it everywhere in my store. Younger and younger men coming in with lower and lower testosterone, women with more severe PMS issues than I'd ever seen before, menopausal issues that were off the charts, and then teens and even preteens with severe PMS issues, mood imbalances, anxiety, depression, and so on. And it was pretty obvious that something was seriously wrong. We started recognizing that this was endocrine disruption, at least that it was a big chunk of the root cause of this. And we started recommending single ingredients like DIM and indole-3-carbinol. I wasn't even aware of calcium D-glucarate much back then. I wasn't as well versed on liver detoxification as I am now. We were just starting to put the pieces together. This is over the last, say, 20 years. But within a few years, formulas did start coming out on the market that were a little more comprehensive than just one or two ingredients, that were doing a little bit more for liver detoxification and also a little bit more for endocrine disrupting chemicals specifically. And we started to recommend these things and started having some really great success. And that's what convinced me that this really was a big problem and really was this kind of root cause situation that we were dealing with. And that's when I started really digging in deeper in terms of my own understanding of this, and also trying to figure out, what were the best things on the market to help address this. Over the years, I've seen things that I never saw before in the last 10 years or so. In fact, I was talking to my son Bridger, who's been working with me now for 11 years, and we were kind of going through it and saying, how often were you hearing these types of symptoms when you first started working here at Vitality? And even then, 11 years ago, not nearly to the extent that we hear them now. Lower and lower testosterone in men and women, which is something that I never saw until the last decade or so. And especially in younger men, including guys even in their 20s, 20-year-old guys with the testosterone levels of people in their 50s, 60s, or even 70s. I've seen more severe depression and anxiety than ever before, more complaints about brain fog than ever before, more issues with menopausal weight gain that just won't budge no matter what these women try, more severe hot flashes, more sleep problems, more mood swings, more fertility issues in couples who, at least from what we can see, should have no problem conceiving. And the list goes on and on. And for years, I've been observing these patterns, researching, trying to understand, what's really driving all this, because I had this theory a long time ago, and I wasn't alone. It's not like I'm a pioneer in this. There were lots of people talking about this, but mostly what I was hearing was, we have these chemicals, we should avoid them. And we have some certain things that might help us detoxify from them. And that was about it. And nobody really talking about the various stages of detoxification. Nobody really talking about how the gut plays a role in this detoxification. Nobody really talking about how calcification of glands might play a role in this problem. And nobody really talking about the neurotransmitter side of this disruption, mostly just the sex hormone side. And it goes so much further beyond that, because it impacts the entire HPA axis, your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, thyroid. This has been such an incredible journey, as I have worked with hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of clients over the years, and have come to recognize that I think this is as big a problem as we have in our health in America today. And it is one that people just simply are not talking enough about. So about a year and a half ago, Jen and I, about 3 years ago, I had this idea that we could come up with some kind of a protocol to really address this in a better way than any of the supplements that we currently had from other brands. But we were having really good success with the other supplements from the other brands. And so it didn't feel like an urgent thing until about a year and a half ago, when Jen and I were at a conference, and we were talking to a lot of practitioners. And we sat down across the table from multiple different practitioners who were very focused on hormone replacement therapy, natural, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And they were talking about hormone replacement without talking about endocrine disruption, without focusing on what the root cause was as to why people needed to replace these hormones in the first place, outside of just age. We also had already had a bunch of success with Cellcore, a brand that most people that listen to this show are at least aware of, with the parasite protocols that we had decided to develop along with Cellcore. And we saw so much benefit from those that it finally just sparked this desire to get this thing going and really do something in a comprehensive and aggressive way to help people with this epidemic issue of endocrine disrupting chemicals messing with their entire body. And it was actually Jen that specifically said to me at one of these conferences, we need to do something bigger. We need to go after this in a bigger way. And that's when I shared with her that I already had the idea of doing it, and it had just been put on the back burner. So we started in earnest about a year and a half ago. We have been working longer and harder and with more roadblocks than we anticipated. Some self-inflicted roadblocks, frankly, and some roadblocks that were beyond our control. But what I'm so excited about, what we are so excited about, what my entire team at Vitality Nutrition is so excited about, is what we have come up with so far and what is coming. And I can't wait to share all of that with you, because the endocrine detox and reboosting train is at the station, and it is time to hop on board. Okay, so what are EDCs? Let's talk about that. I know many people listening know about EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, but I want to get into it, and I want to make sure I'm not leaving anything out, because you do need to understand it. We're not going to talk so much about where they come from. I'll touch on that a little bit. We're going to talk about what they actually are and how they actually impact our health, okay? So your endocrine system is like a sophisticated orchestra. You've got hormones, these chemical messengers. You've got neurotransmitters, also messengers, that are like the musicians playing the symphony. Each one has a specific role to play. Insulin regulates your blood sugar. Thyroid hormones control your metabolism. Testosterone and estrogen manage everything from muscle mass to mood to sexual function. Cortisol does a lot to handle your stress response. And there are dozens more, all working together in this beautiful, coordinated symphony. Endocrine disrupting chemicals are like someone coming into the orchestra and messing with the instruments or playing a different tune, disrupting the music, disrupting the symphony and turning it into cacophony. Your body can't always tell the difference between the real hormones and these chemical imposters, also known as xenoestrogens. EDCs are synthetic chemicals, or in some cases, natural compounds that interfere with your hormonal system. They do this in three primary ways, and this is crucial to understand. First, they are hormone mimickers. They look enough like your natural hormones that they can bind to hormone receptors in your cells. Imagine someone showing up to your house with a key that almost fits your lock. It jams in there, maybe even turns it a little, but it doesn't work right. It won't unlock the door. That's what EDCs do to your hormone receptors. They bind, but they send the wrong signals or no signal at all. And while they're doing that, they're also blocking your real hormones, the real key, from getting in and unlocking the door. Second, they can be hormone blockers. Some EDCs don't try to mimic hormones at all. They just park themselves on the receptor sites like someone taking up 2 parking spaces at the grocery store. You ever see that? That's pretty annoying. Your real hormones show up with important messages to deliver, but they can't get through because the parking lot is full of chemicals that shouldn't even be there and where your hormones and neurotransmitters would normally go. And third, these chemicals don't just mess with the reception of your hormonal signals, they actually disrupt the creation of hormones in the first place. And they interfere with how your body breaks down and eliminates hormones as well. So it really is this trifecta of issues: mimicking, blocking, and disrupting the actual production, all rolled into one thing that creates massive confusion for the entire endocrine system. The most common sources you probably already know, but if you don't, the big offenders are things like BPA in plastics, phthalates, parabens, triclosan, which is an antibiotic, soaps and things like that, antibacterial soaps, PFAs, the forever chemicals we hear about, organophosphate, pesticides and herbicides, PCBs, dioxins. These types of chemicals are what we're talking about, and there are so many more. There are hundreds more than just those. They're found in plastic bottles. They're found in personal care products, including makeup and shampoo and lotion and deodorant and anything with a scent, an artificial scent, nonstick cookware, canned foods, receipt paper, furniture, pesticides and herbicides on conventional produce, tap water, and so on and so on. And one stat that you need to know if you didn't already figure this out is that studies show that 100% of Americans have significantly detectable levels of multiple endocrine disrupting chemicals in their blood at all times. These are not rare chemicals. They are in your bathroom, your kitchen, your yard, your office, and in the air that you breathe and the water that you drink. There is no actual escaping them. Now, again, I said that things are going to sound a little dire at first, but don't worry. There are solutions, I promise, and these solutions actually work. Now, let's get into the three mechanisms that in a little bit deeper so that you understand how these things really do destroy hormone balance. Mechanism one, thyroid disruption and metabolic chaos. Your thyroid is like the master thermostat of your body. You've probably heard that before. It controls your metabolic rate, your energy production, how you burn calories, your body temperature, even how clearly you think. Many endocrine disrupting chemicals, especially the PFAs or forever chemicals that are found in nonstick pans and water resistant fabrics, and chemicals like perchlorate that contaminate drinking water, these specifically target your thyroid. Here's what happens. Your thyroid uses iodine to make thyroid hormones, but chemicals like perchlorate, fluoride, and bromine are chemically similar to iodine, so they compete for the same receptor sites. It's like your thyroid ordered iodine, but the delivery guy brought fluoride instead. Your thyroid tries to use it, but it can't make proper hormones, or it makes weak, ineffective versions, less hormone, that sort of thing. The result, your metabolism can slow down. You gain weight even though you're eating the same amount. You're exhausted, but you can't sleep properly. You're cold all the time or hot and cold. Your brain feels foggy. Your hair starts to thin. You go to the doctor and they run a standard TSH test looking for thyroid stimulating hormone, and they tell you that you're in the normal range. But you don't feel normal. You're suffering from subclinical thyroid dysfunction caused by endocrine disruption. That's one major place where we see issues here. And here's the kicker. These same chemicals also interfere with the conversion of T4 inactive thyroid to T3 active thyroid. That creates even more havoc at the thyroid and the entire HPA axis. Number two, and probably the one that people think the most about, would be sex hormone havoc. We're talking testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and of course, other hormones that fit into those categories, into the sex hormone category as well. This is where things can get really concerning, especially when it comes to fertility, which is dropping dramatically in this country, and also overall long-term health, because EDCs like BPA and phthalates are xenoestrogens. This just means fake estrogen. They're weaker than your natural estrogen, but they're everywhere and they're persistent. For women, this creates a state of estrogen dominance, not necessarily because you're making too much estrogen of your own, but because you've got all these fake estrogens floating around, occupying receptors and throwing off your estrogen to progesterone to testosterone ratio. This can lead to heavy and painful periods, PMS that feels like you're losing your mind, fibrocystic breasts and other fibrotic issues, endometriosis, difficulty getting pregnant, or difficulty maintaining a pregnancy, increased risk of estrogen-driven cancers like breast cancer, cervical cancer, uterine cancer, and things like this. And in women who are in the menopausal or perimenopausal or postmenopausal, we can see more severe hot flashes than previous generations ever experienced, night sweats that disrupt sleep completely, weight gain that seems impossible to control, especially around the midsection, brain fog and memory issues that feel alarming, mood swings and depression, loss of bone density accelerated beyond just normal aging, and cardiovascular risk that can spike dramatically. The EDC exposure throughout our lives has damaged hormone receptors and disrupted our body's ability to adapt to the natural decline in hormones. So menopause, which should be a natural transition, can become a full-blown crisis. Now, for men, these xenoestrogens create a different but equally devastating problem. Estrogen imbalance and elevated estrogen relative to testosterone. You've got these fake estrogens occupying receptors and creating feminizing effects throughout the body. And this is what we're seeing. Testosterone levels that have dropped by 1% per year since the 1980s. Think about it. We're in 2025. Over the last 40-ish years, we have seen a precipitous drop, 1% per year, which means 40+% by now. That is dramatic. Many studies indicate that it's over 50% drop in average testosterone. That's unbelievable if you think about it. Epidemic levels of low T in men that are younger, men in their 30s and 40s, and now even in their 20s. Declining sperm counts down 50% in the last 40 years. Increased body fat, especially around the midsection, and frankly, more man boob. Loss of muscle mass and strength, low libido and erectile dysfunction, depression, and lack of motivation. And I wonder sometimes if that's what we're seeing in a lot of the younger men that people are complaining about, this Gen Z group that we're experiencing. Many of us have Gen Zers that, came from us, right? And this lack of motivation that we seem to be seeing a lot. Is it just video games and social media? Or is it actual just significantly lower testosterone, which is this massively motivating hormone? The problem isn't just that testosterone is low, it's the ratio that's being thrown off. Even if a man has normal testosterone levels, he's got elevated estrogen because of all the xenoestrogen, then he's going to experience some of these feminizing effects. And it's not just adults. We're seeing early puberty in girls, some starting as young as 7 or 8 years old. We're seeing developmental issues in boys. We're seeing gender confusion and hormonal chaos in teenagers. And this is just a social thing. This is a biochemical crisis that can be caused by these environmental toxins. And mechanism 3, one that I don't think anybody's talking about nearly as much as they need to, it should be a primary focus because we all have heard that we have a mental health crisis going on in this country. Have we not? Of course we have. And yet none of us have a Prozac deficiency. That's not the problem. The problem is, and I believe at least a huge portion of that problem is this endocrine disruption. So this is the part that I think that I hope to shed light on maybe more than any other thing, because you'll hear others talking about thyroid, you'll hear others talking about adrenal, you'll hear others even talking about endocrine disruption in their hormones, but we don't talk about neurotransmitters nearly enough. This part is critical. Many EDCs are pure neurotoxins. They cross the blood-brain barrier and interfere with the production and function of serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and other crucial brain chemicals. And this is what we're seeing: skyrocketing rates of anxiety and depression, ADHD and focus issues in both kids and adults at higher rates than what we experienced when I was a child, brain fog and cognitive decline at younger ages. I have more and more people younger than me, I'm 53, coming in saying that they're brain fog, they're concerned because they can't think clearly. That I didn't ever hear that before. Sleep disorders, I can't tell you how many people are coming in complaining about insomnia, mood swings, irritability, and so much more. From listening to this show possibly that 90% of your serotonin is actually made in your gut. And guess where a lot of those EDCs end up, these chemicals? In your digestive tract, disrupting your gut microbiome, inflaming your intestinal lining, and interfering with neurotransmitter production and delivery. There's also a direct connection between your endocrine system and your nervous system. Your hormones regulate your neurotransmitters, and your neurotransmitters influence your hormone production. It's a two-way street. So when endocrine disrupting chemicals throw your hormones into chaos, your brain chemistry follows. Now, I talk a lot about the gut-brain connection, and it is crucial. It is such a crucial component, and we will talk about the gut and how the gut influences this issue as well. But it's not just the gut-brain connection. It is endocrine disruption that is creating a lot of the chaos when it comes to our mental health. So when you connect all of these mechanisms, when we talk about thyroid, when we talk about adrenals, when we talk about the sex hormones and hormone imbalance related to the female cycle and men's testosterone and women's testosterone as well, and then we talk about the mental emotional crisis that we're experiencing, you can see that it's the perfect storm for a dramatic dip in overall well-being coming from this one source. Now, it's not one singular source, right? I wish it was one chemical we could avoid, but it is hundreds of chemicals. And EWG, the Environmental Workers Group, they did a study that showed that if you cleaned up your act entirely, no scented candles, no artificial fragrances, no crappy laundry detergent or whatever you want to think, no storing your food in plastic, and all these things, which I highly encourage that you do. Get rid of these things. They are impacting your health, whether you know it or not. But if you got rid of all of them, you might be able to get rid of 55 to 60% of those things. And the other 40, 45, maybe even 50% are airborne. They're in your water. They're in your food. They're in your air. You can't stop getting them unless you stop breathing. And that means that we have to be aggressive about getting rid of them, not just avoiding them. And I promise you, I'm not saying don't avoid. Avoid. That's a really, really important thing. And it's the main thing that everybody talks about, which I'm grateful for. But we've got to focus on detoxifying them. It's got to be a major part of the conversation moving forward if we're going to really move the health of this country and beyond forward the way that we want to do. So blood testing, let's talk about that, because this gets really confusing, specifically when we talk about things like thyroid hormone, but really sex hormones in particular. This can be very frustrating because I hear all the time. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people come into Vitality and say, hey, I got my blood test results and my doctor says everything's in the normal range. Everything looks normal. You got a little issue here, a little issue there, but that shouldn't be making you feel the way you feel. But Jared, I feel like crap. I don't feel like I should feel. And that's because not only do we have a lot of doctors pulling a lot of blood tests that are not nearly as comprehensive as they could and should be. That's one problem. A lot of doctors that don't really know how to read a blood test, in my opinion, in an optimal way, we'll say, because they count on the reference ranges actually being optimal when it's just normal. But normal in this country is sick. Unfortunately, that's the world that we live in right now. And so, yeah, it's frustrating for you if you've got one of those blood tests and one of those docs that said, yeah, your blood test is fine. It's frustrating for me because I'm looking at it and saying, no, things are not fine. You shouldn't feel this way if things are fine. And then the other issue with blood tests is simply that the blood test can't see some things. And these are the things that I feel the blood tests mostly miss. It can't tell you whether or not the hormones that you are making are actually binding to their receptors because EDCs might be blocking them, or whether those receptors are damaged or desensitized from years of EDC exposure, or whether your cells can respond properly to the hormonal signals, even if they do receive them, or whether your hormone production is optimal or just within range, like I mentioned before, because the range, it's not optimal, I can tell you that. Or whether you're efficiently metabolizing and eliminating your hormones, whether you have xenoestrogens occupying estrogen receptors, or whether your tissues are calcified and can't function properly anyway. Because for the most part, tests are looking at quantity, not quality. They're measuring levels, not function. It's kind of like checking to see if you've got gas in your tank without looking to see whether or not the engine works, or whether the spark plugs are actually firing, or if somebody's poured something else in your tank that's making the gas not work like it should. This is why so many people, and maybe you're one of them, have been told everything's fine when you know everything's not fine. The standard tests aren't designed to catch EDC-related dysfunction. They're looking at the wrong things, or they can't see the things they need to see. We need to look at symptoms. We need to look at patterns. We need to look at the whole picture, not just numbers on a lab report. And the next thing I want to talk about is calcification. I mentioned it briefly above, and I think that this is a really, really important thing that is also just woefully undereducated on. Now, I first started hearing about calcification of the pineal gland years ago. I didn't understand it. I heard about it, and I had people that were digging deep, going down rabbit holes, so to speak, right, when it comes to health, and telling me a little bit about it. But over the last several years, I've started learning more and more about it. And over the last year and a half, I've really started digging in, because this plays a role in the endocrine system health as well. And this is where Jen and I really, as we started digging into this, frankly, initially we thought, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create the world's greatest combination of liver detoxification and endocrine disrupting chemical detoxification that we possibly can. That's a couple of formulas. And then we're going to create the most amazing natural endocrine boosting formulas, one for men and one for women, that will help to boost natural production in hopes that we'll be able to optimize things to the greatest extent of our ability with just that handful of, like 3 products, one for men, one for women, and then a universal liver detoxification and a universal endocrine disrupting chemical detoxification product. But as we started digging in, we thought, you know what, we can't just do that. We can't just do that because the gut plays a massive role in this too. If you listen to my show a lot, I talk about my Vital 5. I talk about the critical nature of probiotics. I talk about the critical nature of digestive enzymes. And so we recognize that that had to be part of this as well. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. But then we also started kind of dwelling on this calcification question, because let's just say that you detoxified all these chemicals out of your body. That's not actually possible, I don't think, but you can detoxify a lot of them. You can clear the plate to a large degree, and that's what we aim to help you do. So you clear them out of your life, and you clear them out of your body. Your liver's doing what it's supposed to do, and even your gut's working well. If you have calcified glands that are supposed to be functioning optimally by being, for lack of a better term, soft, pliable, not calcified, then you're still not going to optimize hormone function and neurotransmitter function. It's simple as that. Your pineal gland, your thyroid, your parathyroid, and your cardiovascular system, they should all be soft functional tissues. But there's a process happening in millions of people where these tissues are literally hardening, calcifying, turning into something more like a bone or cartilage than functioning organs. The 2 main culprits are fluoride and excess calcium, and that calcium not being properly directed into your bones where it belongs. Let's start with fluoride. Now, I live in Utah, and hooray for Utah for being the first state to finally get rid of fluoride in the water. What a win. My dad was fighting against fluoride in the water back when I was a little boy, and he won a few times, he and his friends. But eventually it got into our water anyway, and it's a real problem. Because we've been told that it's good for our health, it's good for our teeth, that the levels in water are too low to cause any harm. And here's what the research actually shows. It accumulates in your pineal gland. This tiny gland in the center of your brain produces melatonin, regulates your circadian rhythm. Remember, I talked about all the sleep issues that people have with all this endocrine disrupting stuff going on, and has been called, the pineal gland, the seat of the soul in spiritual traditions, in many spiritual traditions across the world. Studies using imaging have shown that the pineal gland accumulates more fluoride than any other tissue in the body, including teeth and bones. And it doesn't have a lot of space because it's a little tiny gland for the fluoride to accumulate. And as it accumulates, the pineal gland calcifies. A calcified pineal gland produces less melatonin, which means disrupted sleep cycles, premature aging, increased cancer risk, because melatonin is a powerful antioxidant and actually helps with aging and prevention of cancer. Loss of spiritual connection and intuition, even, according to many traditions. And I believe that that is actually true. If we think about chakras, if you've researched that at all, that crown chakra, the pineal gland is the center, right up there. And if we're having a hard time with spiritual connection, I actually believe that calcification of the pineal gland can be part of the reason. Fluoride also damages the thyroid. It was actually used as a medication in the 1950s to treat hyperthyroidism. That's overactive thyroid, because we know that it suppresses thyroid function. The therapeutic dose was just 2 to 5 milligrams per day. Well, if you're drinking fluoridated water, using fluoride toothpaste, and eating conventionally grown food treated with fluoride-based pesticides and sprayed with water loaded with fluoride, you're getting that much or more every single day, meaning that you're literally taking what is essentially a drug designed to reduce thyroid function. Yes, fluoride is a problem. The result is the same thyroid suppression that they intentionally did with fluoride being done unintentionally now. That means lower metabolism, weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, cold hands and feet, and an inability to lose weight, even if exercise and diet seem like they are what they need to be. Now, let's talk about calcium. You've been told, especially if you're a woman, to take calcium for strong bones and healthy teeth, right? Well, here's the problem. Calcium doesn't automatically go to your bones. If you're not getting the right cofactors, particularly magnesium, boron, silica, vitamin D3, vitamin K2, then calcium ends up in the wrong places. It calcifies your arteries, leading to cardiovascular disease. It calcifies your kidneys, forming stones. It accumulates in your joints, causing osteoarthritis. It calcifies breast tissue, creating suspicious mammogram findings. And yes, it calcifies your endocrine glands, reducing their function. This is especially problematic because most people that are taking calcium supplements are not taking vitamin K2, or they're taking a very small amount of K2. And most of us in America are still deficient in magnesium and deficient in vitamin D and all these other cofactors. And then you have people who are trying to eat a healthier diet by not eating pasteurized, processed dairy products. And so they switch over to plant milks like oat milk or rice milk, or pick the milk, most of which are then fortified with calcium that doesn't have vitamin K2 in it. And it's a calcium that's extremely difficult for the body to break down and get where it needs to go anyway. So not getting enough magnesium, not getting enough K2, not getting enough vitamin D3, not getting enough boron, all of this plays a major role. But specifically, K2 is the big one because it is what directs calcium into bones and teeth instead of the soft tissue. So what's happening because of this in the real world, in actual medicine? Widespread cardiovascular disease. It's still the third leading cause of death in America, even though we now have lower cholesterol levels than we've probably ever had due to drugs that are statins, which, believe it or not, are also endocrine disruptors. Okay. So why do we have this widespread cardiovascular disease? Well, obviously blood sugar, insulin resistance, things like that are a huge part of it. But so are calcified arteries, a major factor. Reduced endocrine function because of calcified glands, chronic pain because of calcified joints, kidney issues because of calcified tissue, accelerated aging because of calcified pineal glands. So this calcification thing is a big deal. And the calcium paradox, which is a book that I absolutely love by an amazing doctor who I've had on the show a couple times, Dr. Kate, I always get her name wrong, Rumi, I believe it is. She nailed it. The calcium paradox is basically we take calcium to build bones, our bones don't get stronger, our heart gets weaker. And the primary solution to that is vitamin K2. So once you understand this, you'll see why supplementing calcium alone, or just getting the calcium in your diet, even if it's from healthy foods, or taking vitamin D and magnesium with calcium, but not K2, is incomplete and potentially harmful. Most people who are supplementing with calcium or getting plenty of calcium in their diet are simultaneously experiencing soft tissue calcification. Their bones, in most cases, are not getting stronger. In fact, they might be losing bone density while their arteries, kidneys, and organs are calcifying. The problem isn't calcium so much as it's the lack of direction. Think of calcium like a construction material being delivered to the building site. If you don't have a foreman directing where those materials go, they're going to end up scattered everywhere, blocking doorways, piled in hallways, making it impossible to function and get the job done. That's what happens when calcium in your body is there without the proper cofactors. Vitamin K2 is that foreman. It activates specific proteins known as osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein. That literally, those two things literally direct calcium exactly where to go. Osteocalcin pulls calcium out of your bloodstream and deposits it into your bones and teeth, and matrix GLA protein prevents calcium from depositing in the soft tissue. Without adequate K2, these proteins sit there inactive, and calcium goes wherever it wants. But here's the really good news. K2 doesn't just prevent new calcification. Studies actually suggest that it can actually help reverse existing calcification in arteries and soft tissue. It can pull that misplaced calcium back out and redirect it to where it belongs. This is huge because we know that there's been damage done. This entire endocrine disrupting chemical thing and endocrine system damage thing and low adrenals and low thyroid and all these other things that we're talking about, there is damage done. And like I said, the first half of this show, maybe more, seems a little dire, only because I want to impress upon you how critical and how widespread this issue is, not because I want you to feel overwhelmed or feel like there's no hope, because there is a ton of hope. And the more I dig into this problem, the more excited I become because there are solutions. A little personal story. My father, as many of you know, passed away 16 years ago from Parkinson's disease. I know he passed away at 16 years ago because my daughter, Nora, turns 16 in about a week. It was on Thanksgiving weekend that this all happened. And so it's easy to remember when Dad left because I gained a beautiful, beautiful little girl the same week that I lost a beautiful hero of mine, my father. And I felt so hopeless back then. Many of you have felt the same thing as you've watched a friend or a family member drop, for lack of a better term, from a disease. Well, I was the guy that people came to, even back then, 26 years ago when he was diagnosed. I was one of the guys that people came to try and help with this kind of stuff. But 26 years ago, I didn't know much about Parkinson's disease. There's a lot of stuff I know now that I didn't know then. And I've been able to help more people with Parkinson's since my dad died, although I still haven't figured out a solution for it. And it is this helpless feeling when you watch someone you love become something else because a disease has riddled their body. It's devastating. It's a living nightmare. But this is why Jen and I are so excited about talking about this, because not only is this endocrine disrupting chemical thing so ubiquitous that we can't escape it, and so widespread in symptomology that I believe every single person listening to my voice right now is dealing with problems directly related to this. Every single person, including me, because it is so ubiquitous. But the excitement comes from the fact that there are solutions. And the more that we employ these solutions, me and my wife specifically employing these solutions for ourselves, but also directing people and helping people understand how to do this here at Vitality Nutrition, on Vitality Radio, and frankly, anytime anybody will listen to me. It's funny because as I was just about to step back here to record this show, I got caught by a couple of customers. They had some detailed questions about some issues that one of them was having with their health. And it led into this discussion. And I said, well, it's interesting timing because I'm just about to record a show on this. Because I'm telling you right now, I don't have a single person that comes into Vitality Nutrition that doesn't need to hear this message. And again, I can't reiterate this enough. It's not a message of discouragement or despair or hopelessness like I felt with my dad with Parkinson's disease, where I could help him with a little bit, but I couldn't do that much. Not back then, but now, and especially because of the research that we put in over the last year and a half, I feel equipped. Jen feels equipped. My team is becoming equipped to help people with this in a way that we've never been able to help before. It is truly exciting stuff. So vitamin K2 became a critical component in this as well. There is a protocol coming. The entire protocol will be released somewhere in the first quarter of next year, between January and March. That's my commitment to you. And I'm confident that will happen. I was relatively confident it was going to happen this year. But like I say, there were some roadblocks. But we're very, very close now. But what we have been doing is introducing a formula at a time. Those formulas are Liver Vitality, Endo Cleanse, Vital D3 and K2, and Back on Track. Now, you may be thinking, Back on Track, that's been around a long time. Well, Jen and I actually reformulated back on track, specifically to make it a better fit for this protocol, even though outside of this protocol, it's now a much better product than it was. I spent a lot of time figuring out how to make Back on Track even better than it already was. It was already my favorite product. And it was already Jen's favorite product. It was already Bridger's favorite product. This is one of our favorite products around the room here at Vitality. We absolutely love this stuff, but it is so much better now. And you owe that, if you're using it, to what we've been doing to research this endo cleanse and reboosting protocol that we're working on. So those 4 products are on the market. And that's what this episode is about, is detoxification, decalcification of the endocrine system. That can start now and has already started for many of our clients, both online and in store. And most of my family, frankly. I'm trying to think if there's any family members I have that aren't on this stuff. So yeah, it's a big deal and we're completely enamored with what we're doing here. But you can get started now because there's no downside in detoxifying your endocrine system for a few months before you start reboosting and fortifying and optimizing endocrine production. So here we are in November. By the time the full protocol rolls out, you can be all ready to just rock with the other half of the protocol, which I'll just give you a little sneak peek on. I already told you there's going to be a men's formula and a women's formula. There's also going to be something called Endo Energize. And Endo Energize is the full endocrine system. I'm so excited for Endo Energize. I can't even tell you how excited. I texted Jen yesterday when I was prepping this show and I said, oh, honey, I can't wait for Endo Energize to come out for us, because it's going to be so freaking cool. But that product's going to be addressing the HPA axis and beyond. And then the Endo Elevate for men and the Endo Elevate for women will be addressing more of the sex hormone side of it and the reproductive side of it. And between all of this, you'll have this incredibly comprehensive protocol that you can use as an entire protocol or can use it piece by piece. All the formulas will be out there on their own as well. But the 4 that we're talking about today that I've been leading up to with this conversation are Liver Vitality, Endo Cleanse, Vital D3 and K2, and Back on Track. Now, I don't want to take this into a massively long episode, and therefore we will have to end this here in a few minutes because we're almost at an hour. So there will be a part 2 to this show, and that part 2 will air on Saturday. So this is a Wednesday show. 3 days from now, we'll have part 2. Listen to them together. One without the other is not what you need. You need them both. And by Saturday, you'll have some really, really cool answers and some really excellent understanding, I believe, of exactly what you need to do. So until then, this is actually a perfect place to stop because the next stop on this podcast is explaining why we did these things, these formulas, the way that we did them, what research we uncovered that opened our eyes to some really cool and unique possibilities. And this is what I'm going to tell you. And I promise you, this is not about me tooting my own horn or as a couple, our own horn. This is the first time Jen's really been involved in product development with Vitality, but there's a couple of reasons for it. One is she's super passionate about this topic. And 2, it was her idea to finally get it off the ground. And so I said, well, if you want to do it, you want to do it with me? Do you want to make this happen together? And she said, yeah, let's do it. And then she started writing the book because the protocol is going to have a big book. I don't know how big, but I think over 100 pages. We thought it was going to be much, much shorter. She's been working pretty hard getting this book ready, and we will be rolling that out next year as well. But regardless, we're so excited about this protocol because we've seen so much benefit from bits and pieces of it over the years, especially me, because I've been doing this for so long, but the rest of my team as well, and certainly my wife, and not just in our clients, but in our own health. We've seen some really cool and unique benefits. But when I say not tooting our horn, I'm going to tell you something. I'm just going to be very, very frank with you. This protocol will be unlike anything that's ever been released on the market. And I don't believe there's anything even close. I have looked. I've looked because this is what I do. When I'm going to develop something, I look to see if it's already out there. If there's already something amazing, you'll notice I haven't come up with a parasite protocol. I mean, we developed one using other people's products, the Cellcore brand. I've talked about it. I thought, man, we should beat Cellcore at their own game, so to speak. I don't think I know how to do that. They have really nailed parasite cleansing. So I'm not going to reinvent that wheel. I mean, maybe down the road, I get some more education and information and figure out better ways to do it. You bet. I'll leave that door open. But that's not how I do it. When I introduce a product into the marketplace, my goal is always to make something truly better than what else is out there. Sometimes they're just a little better value for the money. Like our Vital 5 magnesium is a great example of that. It's a great magnesium, but there are other great magnesiums on the market. But this protocol is like nothing else out there. It is far more comprehensive. It is far more potent. It is far more well-researched. I've never dug this deep into anything that I've produced. And I'm pretty confident in the other formulas that I put out on the market. And many people listening to this show, perhaps you, have tried those formulas and had success with them. This protocol is going to be absolutely electric. And the initial formulas already are. Our feedback has been phenomenal. Liver Vitality is suddenly one of our best-selling products. EndoCleanse is yielding results and people telling us that their results are so life-changing. And we haven't even released the second half of the protocol yet. Liver Vitality, EndoCleanse, Back on Track, Vital D3K2. Those are the first four. But there's a men's formula, a women's formula, and Endo Energize coming. And I cannot wait to introduce those to you, which I will do very soon once they're 100% locked down and ready to go. But on Saturday's show, I'll talk about those four products that are already on the market, what they do, how they do it, what's in them, all of the details that you need to understand. I want this to be comprehensive. It might feel overkill. I hope it doesn't to you. I hope that you're loving all of this information and that you can find benefit with it because of all the things that I've ever touched when it comes to supplements. This is by far the most excited I've ever been about any of it. Okay, I'm going to let you go for the day, and I just ask you to join me again on Saturday so that I can finish this job. That'll be another hour show, I think, but I think it's going to be well worth your time. I cannot wait for you to join me on Vitality Radio in just a few days. Until then, if you have questions, call us 801-292-6662 or jump on our site, vitalitynutrition.com, where we do have a free ebook right now. Just throw in your email and number, and we'll send you this free ebook that's a little bit of a refresher on what I've talked about today. And this is an ebook that's actually a living document that we're adjusting and improving as we go. It's a very, 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 very pared down version of the big book that's coming out here in a few months. So stay with us here at Vitality. We're aiming to change the world. We're aiming to help you change your health because that's why my parents opened this place 48 years ago. And that is the mission that we have today. Thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.